Satoru Mikami, a businessman, is stabbed and killed by a criminal in the street. When he regains consciousness in the dark, he finds that he has been reborn as slime. With nothing better to do, he spends his time eating all the rare herbs and precious ores he comes across. As he does so, he encounters the storm dragon Veldora, who was trapped in this cave 300 years ago by a hero's unlimited confinement skills. He is intimidated at first, but as they talk, he befriends the long-isolated Veldora. The slime, which has been renamed Rimuru Tempest, helps Veldora find a way to break the cave's seal by using his predatory skills, swallowing him inside of his body to analyze his knowledge of the spell containing him. Having acquired greater skills by swallowing other creatures, Rimuru exits the cave after the entrance is opened by a group of human adventurers. Rimuru then encounters a group of goblins who ask for his help protecting them against a pack of direwolves. Teaming up with the goblins, Rimuru battles the direwolves and kills their leader, forcing them to surrender. Convincing the goblins and direwolves to stay together, Rimuru begins giving them all names, but then falls asleep for 3 days, not understanding how much of an exertion it is to name his new friends. When he awakens, he learns of the powerful effect of giving names to the goblins, and that even though he only named one of the direwolves, it developed them all since they operate as one pack. Realizing that the goblins have no skills for making houses or clothes, Rimuru and a small group of goblins go to the city of Dwargon to seek help from some dwarf craftsmen. Upon arriving at Dwargon with Gobta the Goblin, Rimuru gets into a fight with some thugs and is thrown in prison. He's eventually freed after providing potions to the defenders and is introduced to the blacksmith, Kaijin. Rimuru helps him to fill orders for longswords in exchange for his help in providing craftsmen for the goblin village. As Rimuru and the dwarves celebrate at an elf bar, a figure draws near. A fortune teller elf decides to predict Rimuru's destined one and shows him a vision of a girl parting ways with her family. When Vesta, the minister who ordered the swords, arrives and insults Rimuru, Kaijin punches him in anger, resulting in him, Rimuru, and the other dwarves getting arrested and put on trial. During the trial, the Hero King, Gazel Dwargo, who has a history with Kaijin, exiles him and his men, who join Rimuru as his team of artisans. After also exiling Vesta for his dishonest actions, Gazel, noticing Rimuru's connections with Veldora, dispatches a ninja to follow him. After being exiled from the nation of Dwargon, Rimuru and the dwarves return to the village of the goblins. After their arrival, they meet a lot of goblins from other villages, who Rimuru proceeds to name. A few days later, some adventurers arrive after being chased by fire ants, and are saved by Rimuru, with one of the adventurers being another world traveler. While the others are having a meal, he talks to her about their former home while riding on Ranga. Shizu dreams about her past, about when she was summoned by Leon and he had Ifrit, the fire spirit, possess her. She recalls the anguish she felt when Ifrit, residing inside her, killed a new friend she had made and the little monster they named together, after she and Leon were considered enemies by the monster. Later, just as Shizu prepares to leave Rimuru's village with the adventurers, Ifrit once again takes control of her and unleashes his flames upon the village. With his water attack proving ineffective, Rimuru copies Aaron's ice magic spell to take care of Ifrit's minions. When he discovers that he is immune to fire attacks, Rimuru swallows Ifrit, separating him from Shizu in the process. Now, Ifrit lies trapped in Rimuru's stomach, where he encounters the monstrous being known as Veldora. Shizu tells Rimuru about someone known as the Hero, who took her in and showed her the right path before mysteriously disappearing one day. Sensing her life is coming to an end, Shizu asks Rimuru to convey her final wishes to Leon before asking him to eat her, as she doesn't wish for her body to remain in this world that she doesn't like. This gives him the ability to take a human form. As Rimuru decides to seek out information on Leon to fulfill his promise to Shizu, a masked man named Gelmud recruits an orc that he names Geld with the intention of bringing forth a great orc disaster in the forest. Rimuru and the goblins' village is developing nicely. The dwarves are building all kinds of houses and furniture. and the local goblin lords have appointed Rigurd as the Goblin King. As Rimuru watches everything coming together, he decides to return to the cave and test the skills he received from Shizu. While there, he receives a request for help from Ranga through thought communication and rushes back to find his friends facing 6 ogres. One of them orders Rimuru to reveal his true identity. What is going on in the great forest of Jura? Rimuru's village enjoys their banquet, while he, Rigurd, Rieger, Gobta, and Kaijin hear about the ogre's story from their young master, after which he suggests they become his subordinates to increase their overall fighting potential. After thinking about it overnight, the young master agrees, and Rimuru decides to name all of them, causing their evolution. Meanwhile, an army of 200,000 orcs makes their way towards the Lizardmen's residence. The Lizardmen attempt preparations for backup to fend them off, realizing the enemy leader might be the legendary fearsome monster, the Orc Lord. Gabiru arrives at Rimuru's village to try and get everyone to serve under him to fight the orcs. Gobta is sent to duel against Gabiru and defeats him quickly with the skills he's learned, forcing the Lizardmen to retreat. Later, Rimuru is approached by a dryad named Trainee, who asks him to defeat the Orc Lord. Trainee explains that the Orc Lord has used a starved ability on the orcs, causing them to constantly crave sustenance and even eat their own to gain more power. Accepting Trainee's request, Rimuru sends Soe to negotiate with the Lizardmen for an alliance. As the chieftain urges his soldiers not to engage in battle with the orcs until Rimuru's group arrives, Gabiru, swayed by the words of Gelmud's messenger Laplace, usurps the chieftain's position and leads the Lizardmen into a direct attack on the orcs, unaware of the Orc Lord's true power. Rimuru and the others make their way towards the Lizardmen's tribe, as Soe discovers their head guard fighting a bunch of orcs. After saving him, Rimuru establishes their alliance, and they immediately make their way into the battle. As Gabiru is losing a one-on-one duel against an orc general, Gobta, Ranga, and the Goblin Riders come to the rescue. As Kaijin and Ranga massacre many of the orcs with powerful, wide-range attacks, Soe rescues the Lizardman chieftain. A furious Gelmud begins flying to the scene, and Rimuru spots the Orc Lord, thus leading to the final battle. Gelmud arrives and attacks those who foiled his plans, only to have Rimuru fend them off and heal those he injured. He orders Geld to save him, eat others, and evolve into an orc disaster and a demon lord. Remembering the first task he was given after being named, Geld kills and eats Gelmud as the quickest way of evolving. He and Rimuru battle as the two devour each other, resulting in Rimuru's victory as he appeases the fading, guilt-driven Geld into the afterlife. Rimuru and company, Trainee, the Lizardmen, and the Orcs discuss the future and form the Jura Forest Alliance, with Rimuru as their chancellor. Meanwhile, with plans gone awry, Demon Lord Clayman cooks up another scheme. 3 months pass, and the village has advanced a lot, and Gazel Dwargo suddenly makes a surprise visit with his army. After a brief duel to test Rimuru's character, they drink that night and decide on a treaty with the armed nation of Dwargon, thus declaring and establishing their developing village as a new nation, named the Jura Tempest Federation. King Gazel Dwargo brings Vesta over as a researcher, while Gabiru and other lizardmen join Tempest and are named. Everyone gets assigned to their own posts, where, in the meantime, Demon Lords Clayman, Frey, Carrion, and Milim Nava watch a recording of Rimuru's battle against Geld. Agreeing to cancel the non-aggression pact on Jura Forest with these other Demon Lords, Milim arrives at Jura Tempest Federation, where she fights his top subordinates, but finally loses to Rimuru due to the temptation of honey. The two of them become best friends, and Milim decides to live there, with Rimuru unaware of the power struggle between the Demon Lords this just caused. Vesta succeeds in developing a full potion equal to Rimuru's potions, which prompts Rimuru to attempt negotiations to develop low potions in Tempest. Just then, Phobio, Beast Katir of the Demon Lord Carrion, comes to Tempest with the intention of taking it over, but is promptly dealt with by Milim before Rimuru resolves things peacefully. Offering Milim a new weapon in exchange for information, Rimuru learns that the other demon lords have their sights set on him for foiling their plans to create a puppet demon lord. Later, the Border Survey Corps, led by a man named Yom, joins Eren's party and comes to Tempest, where Rimuru asks them to take credit for defeating the Orc Lord. Meanwhile, the demon lord Clayman takes an interest in a powerful beast known as Charybdis and sends Tyr the Harlequin to investigate. As Phobio fumes over his humiliation at Milim's hands, Tyr and Footman, two of Clayman's Harlequins, approach and convince him to become a demon lord himself so he can get revenge on Milim. All he must do is let Charybdis possess his body and maintain control. Phobio breaks the seal on Charybdis, waking it up. Tyr reveals that she was under orders to revive Charybdis and send it Milim's way. Trainee's sister, Traya, warns Rimuru about this revival. Born from a cloud of Veldora's magicules, Charybdis is the mindless ruler of the skies, focused only on destruction. It summons 13 megalodons from the spirit world to aid in its rampage and heads to Jura. Rimuru and the Dwargon Empire prepare for battle. Assisted by 100 Pegasus Knights from Dwargon, Rimuru's forces destroy the megalodons and attempt to destroy Charybdis with a full-scale attack, but fail. Rimuru then battles Charybdis himself, only to discover it's possessing Phobio, and its true target is Milim. At Rimuru's request, Milim defeats Charybdis, but spares Phobio's life. After the battle, Phobio apologizes for all the trouble he caused, and his master, the demon lord Carrion, establishes a non-aggression pact with Jura Tempest. Rimuru and the others finally discover that all the troubles they faced recently were caused by Clayman's Harlequin. The city celebrates its victory with filleted megalodon. That night, Rimuru has a dream about Shizu's regret over not being able to help her students. 5 children brought to this world, named Kenya, Chloe, Gale, Ryota, and Alice. Rimuru goes to the kingdom of Ingracia with Ranga to see them. There, he meets Yuki Kagurazaka, the Grand Master in charge of the children, who's only a teenager himself. Yuki arranges for Rimuru to teach Shizu's students, but warns him that while the two of them are otherworlders who came there, the children are summons who are meant to be weapons for the kingdom. They have so much energy in their young bodies that it will kill them within 5 years. Rimuru vows to honor Shizu's wish and find a way to save them. Shizu's students don't show Rimuru much respect, so he decides to show them the difference in their skill and gain their respect in a series of one-on-one duels. Kenya uses fire magic, Chloe water magic, Gale fires magic bullets, Ryota uses body enhancements, and Alice uses puppetry to control toys to attack him. They lose, but the level of energy in their bodies doesn't decrease, nor can he separate their magic from them as it's fused with their souls. After, Rimuru shows them Shizu's mask and promises to save them. They call him Teach. Rimuru visits Trainee, believing the children will be fine if they can make superior spirits inhabit them. Shizu was summoned as a small child, but lived to adulthood, possibly because of Ifrit. Trainee tells him to go to the dwelling of spirits, but as the queen of spirits that the Dryads served is now dead, they have lost their link to it and can no longer find the entrance. While on a picnic with the students, they see a sky dragon heading to the capital, but Rimuru interferes and eats it with gluttony. Mjolnir, a merchant Rimuru saved, invites them to dinner. Mjolnir's intelligence network has told him who Rimuru is, and Rimuru invites him to come to Tempest to help them sell their wares. He agrees. Mjolnir's assistant asks the Queen of Spirits to protect the children, and tells a curious Rimuru that she came from a village near the dwelling of spirits. He, Ranga, and the children head there. Rimuru, Ranga, and the students enter the dwelling of spirits, and a spirit in the opening labyrinth battles them with a giant metal golem to test them, though Rimuru quickly incinerates it. The labyrinth spirit introduces herself as Ramirez, one of 10 demon lords, though she's so small that no one believes her. She explains that Leon, who summoned Shizu, used to be a hero before he fell from grace and became a demon lord. Likewise, she used to be the Queen of Spirits before dying and returning as a demon lord. In exchange for creating a new golem for her, Ramirez agrees to aid Rimuru in summoning superior spirits. A plethora of inferior spirits answer the prayers of Gale, Alice, and Ryota, so Rimuru devours them and turns them into 3 new superior spirits, which successfully inhabit the 3. Kenya summons and is inhabited by a superior spirit of light. An unknown spirit-like being appears, and Veldora reacts to its presence. Despite Ramirez attempts to stop it, as she feels it's dangerous, it still possesses Chloe. Regardless, the dangerous energy in the 5 children calms, meaning they will not die in a few years. Rimuru makes a new golem for Ramirez, and they return to Ingracia. Yuki thinks it's unlikely that the nations that abandoned the children will try to take them back, so they should be able to live normal lives. Rimuru doesn't tell Yuki how he saved them. He thinks about the past 2 years and declares that all their problems have been solved. He gives Chloe Shizu's magicule suppressing mask, but isn't certain why, simply feeling it was for the best. Unknown to Rimuru, a shady woman is spying on him. A dying woman summons a demon to avenge her and her partner, and the demon agrees to her request, deciding that it would be an amusing distraction. Shizu's memory. Shizu is summoned to the kingdom of Filtwood with other adventurers to stop a demon from taking its remains under the castle and reviving. Upon hearing that Silver Wings, a pair of famous adventurers, were killed by the nameless demon, some try to withdraw. The minister refuses to let them leave, revealing that some are possessed by demons, which causes paranoia among the group. One of the crowd, the demon from before, starts laughing, claiming the knights summoned the lesser demons, but doesn't explain further. Having been hired to kill a demon, he reveals that he intends to kill all the other adventurers present to find the responsible party. Shizu refuses to let that happen and duels with the being, who calls himself Black. One of his blows is reflected by Shizu's mask and takes off his arm. He decides to withdraw, saying the fight was entertaining because Shizu was able to hurt him. Afterwards, Shizu recalls how Leon told her the most powerful demons were the progenitors, known by colors like rouge, red, and noir, black. One of the knights summons her to see the king and takes her beneath the castle. It's revealed that the king and minister were puppets of the same demon she was hired to stop, who has taken on the persona of Orthos, the hero who previously defeated him, thus gaining him the name Orthos and becoming an archdemon. He intends to sacrifice the adventurers and Shizu, who is still worn out from her fight, so he can regain his full strength. Orthos is able to defeat her, but Black appears just in time and kills the king and minister. He reveals that he was summoned by the dying Silver Wings to avenge them, and he's keeping his promise. He scolds Orthos for being overconfident, despite being a dependent of Rouge, and destroys his soul. Officially, the king and minister were killed by Black, who Shizu then defeated. As long as they keep their story straight, Black says he has no reason to target Shizu, then leaves. After the credits, Black observes Rimuru through a scrying glass and declares that next time, Rimuru will lead him to the truth of this world. Rimuru tries to let his students down easy in letting them know that he won't be able to finish out the semester as their teacher. He's got a nation to run after all. He hands over the reins to Tis before heading home. Back in Tempest, Rimuru holds a send-off ceremony for his emissaries to Eurysania. Lord Carrion has agreed to a non-aggression pact and will be sending Eurysanian representatives to Tempest as well. After the delegates depart, preparations for the incoming emissaries get underway. Shion informs Rimuru that a date has been set for another diplomatic excursion to the armed nation of Dwargon. Trainee then appears and lets them know that the Eurysanian representatives have reached Jura Forest and are no more than 2 days out. She also informs them that their champions will be arriving sooner than that. Yom and company make their way to Rimuru City and take a load off with the slime over a few glasses of brandy. Rimuru would like to mass-produce the booze to bolster its trade capabilities. He details the current political machinations to the former bandits turned champions. The following day, the Eurysanian emissaries arrive, and one of Carrion's 3 beast Katirs, Albus, greets Rimuru and his welcoming party. Another representative, Sophia, kicks open a carriage door before expressing her discontent with the monster leader of Tempest being a slime. She also takes a dislike to Rimuru's keeping company with humans. Rimuru turns to Yom and encourages him to defend his honor as a human. But before they can throw down, Shion is unable to contain her anger and tells the champion to step aside. She and Sophia square off, while Albus instructs another, Grucius, to fight Yom. Shion and Sophia duke it out, with neither having a clear advantage, until Shion decides to end it with a maximum magic bullet. Right before things get hairy, Albus comes between the two, decisively ending the battle. It seems like everyone passed the Eurazanians' test, and they now regard the nation of Tempest with respect. However, Shion still has her massive magic attack charged and ready to fire, and can't seem to shut it down. Rimuru tells her to fire it at him, and to everyone's surprise, he simply absorbs it, like it's no big deal that he could, or that he just saved everyone. This further amplifies the newfound respect of the Eurazanians. With that, the welcome party can kick off back in Tempest. The guests enjoyed the apple brandy a bit too much. Rimuru remarks that the available fruit in the region is barely enough to make the booze, which is why it's reserved for special occasions. This makes the emissaries' ears perk up. Fruit is plentiful in Eurazania, and they're more than willing to set up trade relations in exchange for a steady supply of stiff drinks. Rimuru leaves the details to a kobold merchant who's familiar with trading in the demon regions. The delegates depart after a few days, but leave behind some artisans to learn about the city's advanced technologies. Grucius was also left behind to join the guards in Tempest. Rimuru's students are hard at work back at Freedom Academy, as he checks up on them before the others return from Eurazania. The Eurazanians, despite lagging behind in technology and engineering, they're worlds ahead in farming techniques. Benimaru doesn't see the need for his involvement in Carrion's domain. He has complete trust in their ruler and recommends Rieger as his replacement to head future delegations. Rimuru and company then set off for the armed kingdom of Dwargon. They run into the orcs who are rebuilding the road after it was destroyed in a previous battle, and Rimuru materializes some much-appreciated kegs of beer for the workers. When they reach the gates, Kaido fails to recognize Rimuru. He hasn't seen him as a human before. They're led to see King Gazel by Dorf, captain of the Pegasus Knights, a secret order that outwardly presents as civil servants. Elsewhere, a crystal ball tracks the slime's movements. It turns out to be Clayman, who has one last request for Mulan before he returns her heart. Shion and Dorf attend the meeting between Rimuru and Gazel. Shuna comes in and serves apple brandy, which completely floors the king. Rimuru explains that their new trade relations with Eurazania will supply them with enough fruit to produce ample amounts of liquor. Gazel is impressed with how much the slime gets around, noting that if he keeps this up, Tempest will soon become a larger trade hub than Falmouth, which he wouldn't mind. He isn't a fan of their leader. After a drunk Shion makes a scene, Rimuru heads back to his room to prepare for his speech. When it's time to address the foreign kingdom, the slime panics at first, but ends up delivering the speech the way he wanted. However, Gazel is unimpressed, citing how weak and overly humble Rimuru came off. But he takes this criticism as a sign that the king cares about his success as the ruler of Tempest. That night, Rimuru and the Goblin Riders decide to have a night on the town. They head to the Butterflies of the Night, a bar run by elf women who remembered the slime fondly from the last time he was there. They meet up with the dwarves, who were already there waiting for them. Despite trying to keep things quiet, on their way back, the group is confronted by an unimpressed Shuna and Shion, who proceed to chew them out. Their penalty? Endure Shion's cooking for a week. Elsewhere, in Falmouth, Yom and company are introduced to Mulan, who offers her services as a magician. The champion isn't interested. That is, until she overpowers him with magic, against which he has no defense. Thoroughly convinced, he welcomes her to join the group. Rimuru heads back to Freedom Academy to announce the students' exam results. They all pass. Yom and his party return to Tempest with Mulan, who's to become a consultant and military advisor specializing in magical attacks. The champion gives her the grand tour, and she's taken aback by how much of a threat the nation really is. And she's surprised that Yom seems completely oblivious to the fact that she's actually a Majin. They head to the training grounds, where Grucius is skeptical of Mulan's abilities, right up until she completely wrecks him. Afterwards, he agrees to join Yom's party to broaden his horizons. Gobta has the bright idea to use the magician to finally take down Master Hakuto, which goes about as well as it can. Meanwhile, Rimuru's students are distracted by their new manga, while he talks shop with a potion peddler. He worries about the security pact with Blumund, since it means that if Blumund were ever attacked, Tempest would have to help them defend themselves. The merchant points out that it's more likely that Blumund may have to come to the aid of Tempest. Their growing influence could paint a target on them. In Falmouth, the king holds a council where they discuss Yom's new title and allegiances. One of the council members advises the king to take action against Tempest before the nation develops more alliances. An archbishop of the Western Holy Church informs him that they consider them enemies of their god and plan to subjugate them. If any harm came to a citizen of their kingdom, hypothetically of course, then they would be forced to launch a full-on holy war. Razan, the chief sorcerer, enlists the otherworlder slaves Kiyoya, Shogo, and Kirara to start trouble in Rimuru City. Kiyoya hopes to use the situation as leverage to free themselves. Mulan and Yom grow closer, but falling for him is unthinkable while under Clayman's control, especially after Clayman contacts her telepathically and threatens his life if she fails in her mission, but then hints at the prospect of her freedom if she fulfills his wishes. Preparations for Rimuru's return are underway when Benimaru is informed that forces from Falmouth march on Tempest. Suddenly, Albus attempts to contact them on a crystal ball. Reception's not great, though she manages to request asylum for Eurazanian refugees. Demon Lord Milling is mounting an attack on Carrion's kingdom in the next week. The three otherworlders make it to the city, only to become furious at the leg up it has on Falmouth. These monsters have a better quality of life than they do. They commence their plan to stir up trouble and make the monsters out to be, well, monsters. Kirara tries to implicate Gobso for copping a feel. Gobta steps in and tries to resolve things peacefully. She picked a poor target. Everybody knows Gobso's only got eyes for Shion. Instead of inciting the crowd, it just entices them to laugh it off. Kirara is furious and tries to unleash her power to take both goblins out, but then Shuna intervenes and cancels it. When she and Shion confront the otherworlders, they're all too happy to escalate. Elsewhere, Clayman relays his final orders to Mulan. He plans to cut off Tempest's communications by having her create an anti-magic barrier surrounding the city. Before she can go through with it, Grucius stops her. He calls out her strange behavior and reveals that he knows she's a Majin. Now that she's found out, she presents her true form. Grucius deduces that she's acting under someone else's influence, and even narrows it down to Clayman due to the tactics. Just then, Yom happens upon them. He's completely unfazed by her appearance and confesses his feelings, which catches her off guard. But while Yom and Grucius argue over winning Mulan's affection, she casts the spell. A force field forms surrounding the city. At the same time, the Falmouth forces make their first move, another force field on top of Mulan's. Meanwhile, Rimuru bids farewell to his students at the academy before heading back to Tempest. On the road, he feels that something is off. Great Sage notifies him that he's surrounded by a field that restricts his use of spatial magic. A beaten-up body double of Soe appears. He advises Rimuru to flee, alerting him of the attack on Tempest. He gets another notice. There's another barrier that limits the use of skills. He uses Resist. It's successful, though his magical abilities are still hampered. An overly confident woman approaches him, intent on taking the slime out. He recognizes that she's a holy knight. She says that Tempest is in her way and that an attack on the city has already commenced. Back in Tempest, Kiyoya tries to strike down Gobta when Master Hakuto steps in. But the barrier is sapping his strength and the old man takes a slash to the gut. Meanwhile, Shion continues to fight Shogo until he notices the arrival of the Falmouth forces, cries out that the monsters are the aggressors, according to plan, and then runs off. The captain of the enemy forces spews some nonsense about breaking human law so he can excuse his imminent war crimes. Noticing a young goblin directly in the path of the cavalry, Shion rushes to save her. Screams ring through the streets as the city burns. Meanwhile, Hinata finally introduces herself. and Rimuru tries to convince her that he's also Japanese. She, however, is stuck on the idea that he's responsible for Shizu's death and is bent on revenge. The two clash, analyzing each other's techniques and capabilities. Hinata's sword has an ability called Dead End Rainbow, which attacks spirits directly and kills them in 7 hits, 1 for each color of the rainbow. Rimuru summons the superior spirit of fire, Ifrit. However, Hinata's ability, Usurper, steals people's abilities, which she uses on the spirit. Though she's unable to steal it, it only renders it incapacitated. Rimuru only has 1 hit left, and as a last-ditch effort, he uses Gluttony. He's able to squeak it out just as her sword connects. Rimuru loses consciousness, but his plan worked. Suddenly, his body starts to morph and contort, turning into some Frankensteinian amalgamation of different monsters he's absorbed. Hinata summons her own spirits to deal with the new creature, and then uses a powerful ability aptly named Disintegration, as that's exactly what it does to him. Them. Whatever. Finished with her quest for revenge, Hinata sheathes her blade, dons her monocle, and departs, satisfied. Unbeknownst to her, while Rimuru distracted her with Ifrit, he quickly made a body double that would be sacrificed in the battle. As soon as the coast is clear, Ranga is set free, and the two try to teleport back. Unfortunately, the barrier won't let them get into the city, and they end up in a cave with a handful of survivors. They fill Rimuru in on the Falmouth attack on the city. On the outskirts, the Great Sage analyzes the barrier, which is less potent than Hinata's, and he can get through it. He instructs the others to look for whoever's casting the outer barrier and heads in. Upon entering the city, Rimuru finds more survivors, who have trouble finding the words to explain what's happened. An explosion rumbles in the distance, and Rimuru runs off toward it. Benimaru faces off against Grucius, who's protecting Mulan. Yome lay unconscious in her lap. The others catch up while catching Rimuru up. Yome wakes up and is steadfast in protecting the Majin, alongside Grucius. She takes responsibility for the horrific scene deeper in the city. Rows and rows of the dead line the streets. Most had just been following the slime's rule of being kind to humans. The Great Sage alerts Rimuru that Mulan alone cannot possibly be responsible. He asks her to join him and the others for a meeting, and the potion peddler Mjolnir asks to join as well. He gives insight into Falmouth's motivations. Apparently, as new trade routes have opened up, Tempest's recent string of negotiations has significantly reduced Falmouth's economic stability, and the Western Holy Church simply doesn't acknowledge any monster's right to exist. They lashed out like petulant children. He tells the peddler to notify Blumund about the attack, and emphasize that Falmouth is the instigator and aggressor. Having nothing to hide now, Mulan reveals that Clayman has been pulling the strings the whole time. The demon literally has her heart in a jar, which makes it a tad bit difficult to say no. With Yome's pleading, Rimuru puts her punishment on hold and assigns guards to watch her. The rest of them head to check on the wounded. Until now, healing Gobta and Hakudo was impossible, but thanks to Gluttony, Rimuru is able to patch them up. When he asks about Shion, the room goes silent. Benimaru solemnly leads him to the square. She was cut down while trying to save the child when the attack broke out. Rimuru asks to be left alone. While he laments, Erin and her guards show up. Apparently, there's some fact-based fairy tale about resurrecting the dead. She reveals herself to be an elf and relays the tale of a girl, a product of the union between a human and a dragon who raised an entire kingdom whose king was responsible for killing her pet baby dragon. Destroying a nation, she became a demon lord and was able to bring the dragon back to life. But without a soul, the dragon went on an uncontrollable rampage. So what she's trying to say is, if the barrier over the city is containing the magicules that make up the souls of the departed, there's a chance to bring them back to life. A 3.14% chance to be precise. The Great Sage informs Rimuru that he already possesses a demon seed, so with enough energy in the form of human souls, he'll be able to become a demon lord. He just needs around 10,000 souls, give or take. Lucky for him, Rimuru receives a report of Falmouth's forces marching on the city, 20,000 strong. Back at City Hall, Rimuru passes judgment on Mulan, and she's put to death. For about 3 seconds, so he can replace her artificial heart with a new one. Clayman had bugged the one he made, so he had to convince her that she was really going to die to really sell it. Instead of making her swear fealty, he asks for a favor. While Yom celebrates, Rimuru drops a bomb on him. Since he's going to wipe out Falmouth's forces wholesale, they'll need a new king. They hold another meeting afterwards, and Rimuru reveals that he used to be a human in his previous life, which helps explain his original stance on human relations. He's surprised when everyone is unfazed by the revelation. They follow him because of who he is. Who he was doesn't concern them. Rimuru still believes peace is possible and still wishes to bridge the gap between humans and monsters, but that'll have to wait until after he's managed the current situation, become a mass murderer, and a demon lord. The enemy army is 3 days out, comprised of 10,000 Falmouth Knights, 6,000 mercenaries, 1,000 magic users, and 3,000 temple knights. Rimuru explains that he will take out the enemy forces alone as part of the ritual to become a demon lord, resurrect the fallen, and ease his conscience. While he's dealing with the army, 4 different teams will take out the companies of knights guarding the devices that maintain the outer barrier. Benimaru to the east, Hakuro, Rigurd, Gobta, and Geld to the west, Gabiru and his men to the south, and Soe with his party to the north. The west is the most likely position held by the Otherworlders. He tells Shuna and Mulan to create a new barrier to contain the residual magicules when the other barriers go down. They'll take the enemy by surprise, bringing the fight to them 3 days sooner than Falmouth's forces expect to arrive in the city. Everyone prepares and heads to their allotted positions. Rimuru flies above the soldiers, rationalizing the looming genocide he's about to commit. The strike teams dispatch the first 3 camps with ease. In the west, Otherworlders Shogo and Kyoya watch as only 4 monsters show up and proceed to take out the entire camp. They underestimate them greatly. Geld faces off against Shogo, Hakuro against Kyoya, while Kirava sleeps in a nearby tent. Since the monsters are no longer weakened by being within the barrier, the humans have no idea what they're in for. Their overconfidence is their tragic flaw. Hakuro tears down Kyoya, making a complete fool out of him. He can't even get a hit in edgewise, and his body is quickly relieved of the burden of having to schlep that annoying head of his around. Shogo tries to manipulate Geld's ego to convince him to fight hand-to-hand without weapons or armor, but Geld's not an idiot. The Orc Lord uses rot to take out his limbs, rendering them useless. Upon seeing Kyoya's severed head, Shogo turns tail and runs, panicking still more after seeing the entire camp already wiped out. Like a coward, he wakes Kirara to kill her and absorb her soul to gain the survivor ability, allowing him to regenerate. Geld and Hakuro allow him a moment of manic rambling. How cute, he still thinks he has a chance. Then Geld proceeds to beat the ever-living daylight out of him. It turns out the ability to regenerate also means he gets to experience extreme pain almost indefinitely. He resorts to, "It was just a prank, bro." Geld ignores him and goes in for the kill. Shogo is saved at the last minute by Razin, who retreats after assessing how strong his opponents are. But before he dips, they let him in on a little secret. They've pissed off the one person they should fear the most. Razin is shocked to learn that Hinata failed in her mission to kill Rimuru. Safely away from the battle, for the moment, Razin casually ends Shogo and transfers his own soul into the young body, acquiring all of Shogo's abilities in addition to his own. Meanwhile, Rimuru hovers above the enemy army and casts an anti-magic field. He conjures water and fires droplets at such speeds they pierce the soldiers' armor and skulls with ease, killing thousands in seconds. The king clings to his aid while his men drop like flies around him. Fulgen thinks of a genius plan to use soldiers as human shields. He rushes off to go, and he's dead. Rimuru descends on them, still wearing the mask that suppresses magical abilities. He takes out Razin as easily as any other. The king believes he can still make a deal, and the archbishop begs for his life. The king attempts to negotiate for his life and kingdom, but can't help but repeatedly slip into condescending the ruler of the monster nation. Rimuru loses patience and removes one of his arms to shut him up. The Great Sage details Rimuru's newly acquired skill, Merciless, which takes control of anyone who has lost the will to fight. He then uses it to kill the rest of the army in an instant. The sage verifies that he has taken the requisite number of souls, initiating the Harvest Festival. Rimuru's going to be out of commission for a bit, so he sacrifices the bodies of the dead soldiers to summon demons to aid. The beginning of the Harvest Festival is announced to the city. All those who are connected to Rimuru will gain special abilities by proxy. The process will evolve him into a demon slime. He'll be able to freely change his material and spiritual form. All abilities he previously acquired will be reacquired, as well as new abilities: Infinite Regeneration, Universal Detection, Lord's Ambition, Enhanced Replication, and Universal Thread. He also gains a slew of resistances: Natural Element Nullification, Ailment Nullification, Spiritual Attack Resistance, and Holy Attack Resistance. Things get a little sticky when the Great Sage itself tries to get in on the evolution action, acquires a new skill, Wise One, and gets caught up in a failure loop trying to take it to the next level. Giving up on that, it sacrifices the new unique skill's ability for a little more evolutionary leverage and successfully upgrades to Raphael, Lord of Wisdom. It then sacrifices the Merciless skill to evolve Gluttony into the ultimate skill, Beelzebub, Lord of Gluttony. Meanwhile, the summoned demons happen upon the lone survivor, Razin, who was saved by the survivor skill. Still somehow cocky despite facing insurmountable odds, he summons a spirit. Since demons beat angels, angels beat spirits, and spirits beat demons in a sort of rock, paper, scissors trifecta. But the demon merely laughs it off. The spirit is too young and easily dispatched. Razin concludes he's facing off against an archdemon, who then creates an anti-magic field, heavily handicapping himself. He wants to showcase just how powerless the foolish wizard is to save himself. Apparently, this demon is something of legend called the Primordial, and when Razin realizes this, he's completely overwhelmed and just passes out. The new and improved Rimuru speaks through Raphael, telling his followers to rest, then sucks up all the magicules in the area and distills the spirits of the dead. But he's not quite able to finish the ritual. The demons appear, and the two demon lackeys offer their own life essences to bolster the number of magicules to meet the mass resurrection quota. After becoming a demon lord, the chances of completing the ritual increases to 100%. Before the battle, Benimaru made sure to create a passphrase with Rimuru to make sure the ritual didn't change him too much. The call, Shion's cooking. The response, tastes like
Frutti.
As he comes to, Raphael confirms the successful evolution to his relief. Rimuru opens his eyes, and he's greeted by Shion. He notices a subtle change in everyone's appearance, and Raphael notes that they've evolved alongside him. Rimuru notes that Great Sage is speaking more fluently and seems to have more personality. Raphael confirms that it is Raphael and no longer Great Sage. Benimaru wants to make sure he's still the same and uses the call sign. They hadn't planned on Shion already being resurrected and present. Rimuru circumvents the trap of insulting her to her face and makes sure it's known that Benimaru came up with the response. Apparently, something drastic happened in Eurazania while Rimuru was out for the past 3 days. The demon lord Milim had declared war on Carrion and his kingdom. Carrion sent his beast Gatirs to evacuate the citizens to Tempest. That was 10 days ago. More recently, Carrion and Milim square off, but the Beastmaster is no match for the destroyer's incredible power. Milim levels a mountain in a show of strength, when suddenly the Sky Queen Frey appears behind Carrion with a knife to his throat, ending the duel. Such an underhanded move is uncharacteristic of Milim, and apparently the two were headed for Clayman's realm afterwards. In the present, the remaining summoned demon is crushed when Rimuru doesn't recognize him and tells him he's free to go. He desperately wishes to serve him. The slime asks if he's cool with working for free. He is. Since he doesn't have a name, Rimuru decides to call him Diablo, and the naming causes the mysteriously powerful demon to evolve still further, and he swears fealty. Rimuru lets him in on the complex political landscape. It's a productive monologue. Raphael chimes in to let him know that with his new power, he's able to fulfill his promise to release Veldora the dragon. This will help keep the church in check. Rimuru creates a double of himself, so Veldora can inhabit it. The process is a success, and the dragon immediately alters its body and becomes shredded. The slime then sets his sights on the Demon Lords in Clayman's domain, whose plans are still a mystery. Thank you for sticking until the end. Subscribe for more videos like this.